Hello, everyone, and welcome to Microsoft Mechanics Live. Coming up, we're joined by CVP Brad Anderson to get the latest on device management with the new Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which brings together System Center Configuration Manager and Intune in one unified web-based experience, plus the evolution of our compatibility tools and services to ensure that your apps and devices, add-ins, and sites are always ready, and also new security baselines and threat and vulnerability management to help bring IT teams and security teams together, and much more. To do that, please join me in welcoming Brad Anderson.
Hey, it's great to be here. I appreciate everybody coming and 5 o'clock standing around here. I love mechanics. I love what you guys have built.
Thank you, thank you. We always love the systems management and all the different things that you're doing.
Well, it's kind of like you and I both started in this space.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So we've recently announced really big updates. I think I've been around since day one of System Center Configuration Manager, really to further unify the endpoint management solution story that we've got in terms of bringing together Microsoft 365, all the admin-related improvements, everything with Microsoft Endpoint Manager, bringing together Config Manager as well as Intune. What's behind that?
Yeah, it's really about simplification. It's the same team that builds Config Manager and Intune, and we've thought about it as a continuum. But the reality is, I continue to get these questions like, is Config Manager dead? Is everyone like the future everybody moving to Intune? And that's not at all the way we think about it. So we started asking ourselves, why is there this meme out there? We pretty quickly realized, we had issues of branding didn't convey a unified experience. We had some licensing issues. The product truth didn't reflect what we were trying to do. And so today what we really were announcing is massive, massive simplification. And so for example, we start here, Config Manager and Intune is now one brand, Microsoft Endpoint Manager. That is a brand that conveys, listen, it's all one, it's just one continuum. In terms of the licensing change, I don't know if everybody caught this when I said this before, but if you own Config Manager today, those licenses you now also own Intune to use in conjunction with Config Manager in a co-management scenario on Windows. And so like the go-do for all of you, go attach Intune to Config Manager tonight in the hotel room, because that's how we're going to bring the cloud power down to it. And then the third thing is we made product truth changes. And so we're making changes in how we actually bring this all up in one integrated experience.
All right, so Brad, you started out in user support. I've done a lot of user support in
Yep.
my days in IT as well. So can you walk us through a unified endpoint manager scenario in the context of help desk, kind of the calls that we get every day?
Yeah, let's walk through it. I just wanted to reflect on something Jeremy said. I don't know if everybody knows this, but in 1991, when I started in this industry, I started on the front lines of technical support, taking phone calls. I wish everyone who worked for me could go spend 6 months on the phone. You develop a level of empathy and understanding of customers that you get no other way. And that's been core to who I've been, in coming up on 30 years now.
Right.
All right, so here you're sitting looking at the new Microsoft Endpoint Management admin experience. The first thing to draw your attention to up here in the upper left, before you used to go to what we call DMAC, and that would be where you'd go to manage your devices. It's now Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And what you'll see in the future, instead of going to Device Manager or devicemanagement.microsoft.com, you'll be going to something like endpointmanager.microsoft.com. But this is now where we bring it all together. So let's walk you through it. So first of all, I want to come click here on Devices. Give ourselves a little bit more room here. Now, when I click on All Devices, literally what you're seeing here now are all of the devices that are being managed by Intune and Config Manager, all brought together in one experience. Now, we're not taking all the data from Config Manager and moving it up into Intune. This is a connected experience, and in this admin experience, we're bringing data in both from Config Manager and Intune and letting you see it all together in one place.
Okay.
Come down here, let's click on one of these devices. This happens to be a co-managed device, so it's being managed by both Intune and Config Manager. As you bring it up here, first of all, you see here at the bottom, you see the workloads that have been swung over to Intune. And so from a help desk perspective, you can see, where do I need to go check out the policies at. But I want to go specifically dive into this troubleshooting tab here. This is one of the first end-to-end scenarios targeted on a specific persona that we built into the new Microsoft Endpoint Manager console. And so the scenario is, somebody has called in, they're looking for some support on one of their devices. And so from the help desk perspective, I can go and I select the user. I'm going to go in here and type in a user. I'm looking for a user named Aubrey. I can click on Aubrey, go and take a look at the devices. And so now it's bringing in all the devices that are Aubrey's devices. You can see the first one here is an Android phone being managed by Intune. The second one is a Windows 10 device being managed by Config Manager. I'm going to click into that Config Manager device. It's pulling the data out of Config Manager now up into this web experience. And I can see things here, like the device, et cetera, et cetera. Let me walk you into Device Explorer. So as I come into Device Explorer, it's pulling, again, the data in from Config Manager. And the thing I love the team built here is this thing called the timeline. This timeline is showing me all the changes and events that occurred on this particular PC, and I can actually go dive into it now. You see here, if I were to scroll down here, you can see the actual incidents and the actions. I want to go dive into this one because there's some details I want to give you here. So this right here is an actual crash that happened on this particular PC. This crash was caused by a specific agent. One of the things that we've done is we've now wired up the back-end database called Dr. Watson, which is where all of the crash data comes into Microsoft. We've now wired that up to your Intune tenant. So I can now, for the first time, actually show you all the crashes that are happening in your tenant so you can take action on. I can then marry that with what's happening in crashes worldwide, and that's what you see in this diagram here. The red are the crashes happening in your tenant on this specific issue. The blue are the crashes that are happening globally on every single organization that is using Microsoft Endpoint Manager and sending back telemetry back to Dr. Watson. So you now have this global view of what you can do. Now, the beauty of this is this connected experience. It brings together all of Microsoft Endpoint Manager into one unified, integrated experience. And what you should expect, each month, you're going to see more and more of the Config Manager capabilities coming up into this experience. As you deploy Config Manager 1910 is where you'll start to see all this light up inside of the console.
And one thing, just to repeat something you said earlier, if you own Config Manager for Windows, you can use Intune today as well, right?
Yeah, this is fascinating. We were out doing some research with a customer. We asked them why they hadn't turned on co-management. And the implementer said, well, I don't know if I own Intune, so I've been afraid to turn it on. And so what we said is, let's get rid of all those kind of barriers. If you have Config Manager, you are licensed to use Intune in conjunction now with Config Manager on that device. You get all this cloud power.
All right, looks great to see all the additional capabilities that we have, aggregating all the Config Manager capabilities into this console. But we've changed device management in the admin console for Endpoint Manager. And even though most organizations now are probably on Windows 10, what do you do in terms of helping people stay up to date, or if they're not on Windows 10 yet, get up to date?
Yeah, a year ago, we launched or we announced a product called Desktop Analytics, and this right here is the landing page. And the concept behind Desktop Analytics is let's put to work all the data that comes into us, and let's see if we can actually solve for you and do the work for you on your application compatibility testing. And so, what we've actually seen now over the last year as we've worked with organizations is the following. We've been able to reduce the amount of time that it takes to upgrade from one version of Windows to another by 85%. What you're seeing in the graphic here, a number of customers told us that it takes them about 12 months to upgrade from one version of Windows to another. Now using Desktop Analytics, which automates all their validation and compatibility, they've now got down into 2 months. We have a couple of customers that have told us their deployment of Windows in the past used to take 24 months. It's now taking them 4. But it's such a wonderful example of how we put AI to work and solve problems for you that you had to do through humans in the past. And so we completely solve your validation of your compatibility testing.
And how about compatibility itself? How good is that?
Yeah, the compatibility from Windows 7 to Windows 10 has been incredible. So my team has had a chance to look at almost 500,000 applications that you've contacted us on. And of those 500,000 applications, we have found 920 that have worked on Windows 7 and didn't work on Windows 10. That equates to 19/100ths of 1% of all the apps have had a compatibility issue.
It's like 2 out of 1,000.
Yeah, if you have 1,000 apps, 2 of them have not worked on Windows 10. I got to take my hat off to the Windows organization. They did an unbelievable job in compatibility from 7 to 10. If I were to ask everybody in this room here, what percentage of your applications on 7 do you think would break on 10? I'll bet you most of you would say 5 or 6%. 19/100ths of 1% is what we actually see.
And we run blocking just millions of seats, right?
Yeah, and so through this, we have this program called App Assure, and what that allowed us to do is we unblocked 52 million devices to upgrade to Windows 10. And the fascinating thing about that is we were able to help those customers avoid 31 million help desk calls. You do the quick math on that. That saved our customers $5.5 billion in help desk calls.
Right, and I think your tagline right now, is just call me. So what? where do we find all this help? What's the best way to do it?
Yeah, and so, the program it used to be called Desktop App Assure. We now call it App Assure because we're including additional services. We'll talk about that next here. But the concept here is, whether it is on Windows, on Office, we'll talk about Edge and things in a minute. If you find a compatibility issue, you can come up to this website. You can actually log an incident. It actually comes to my engineering team. We'll contact you. We'll look at your app. We'll look at whatever the case may be is, and we'll either fix the Microsoft solution or we'll help you fix your app because we want you unblocked and moving forward as quickly as you can.
Right. We've also fixed bugs inside of Windows itself. So if there's about 80 or so, I think only as part of this, but out of the 500,000.
Yeah, so we actually fixed 82 bugs inside of Windows, but it's more often than not. One of the most interesting things about this is there is listed about 14 issues that are the most common things that cause compatibility of an app in terms of Windows 10. And often you'd be surprised how often the company has built an app that has a check for the version of Windows, and it was built 5 or 10 years ago, and when it sees version 10, it says, I don't know what that version is, and it craps out, if you will. And so we help you write a shim for that, but we solve the problem for you and get you unblocked.
And one of the cool things is, I think we announced this week, we're expanding that as well.
Yeah, and so we're expanding the promise of what used to be called Desktop Aperture, we're now calling it Aperture, and we're extending the promise to Edge and to Windows Virtual Desktop. So here's the promise to you. If you have an app that runs in Chrome, or it runs in Internet Explorer, and it doesn't run in the new Edge, call me or my team, and we will fix it, okay? If you have an app that runs on Windows 10, and it doesn't run in Windows Virtual Desktop, literally call us, and we'll fix it. We want you to understand we are taking on the responsibility for compatibility. We're putting a promise out there that if you run into a compatibility issue on Windows, on Office, on Edge, on a Windows Virtual Desktop, my team is going to stand behind you, and we will either make the fix in the Microsoft product or we'll help you fix your application.
And by the way, we had an awesome show with Alex Lopez on Aperture, and they're really legit. They've got all the debugging, fixing. They'll even repackage your apps for you to get them in a state where you can deploy them with tools like Config Manager.
Absolutely.
If you check out aka.ms/AA Mechanics, you can check that out. But we mentioned Microsoft Edge. It's part of the program now in terms of Aperture. How much of a problem is it in terms of going to a newer version of Edge, and what does it look like from a site's perspective as you move to a more modern browser?
Yeah, so as I look in the telemetry that comes back to us, the average organization has about 2,000 apps that they deploy through Config Manager. And of those 2,000 apps, often half of them are web apps. And I'm sure all of you have seen the following. Let me bring up, this is the old Edge. This could be Chrome. I'm going to go click onto a link here now. When I click on this link, it's actually based on a Silverlight app that requires IE. And what you notice has happened here is it pops up another Explorer. It pops up another browser. Now, to your users, they go, why is that happening? It just doesn't feel like it's a good experience. So let me show you what we've done inside of Edge now. So if I come to the new Edge here, same application, but I'm now running in the new Edge that we announced. The GA date of this will be January 15th next year. Click on that same link. Now watch what happens. We've built IE compatibility into Edge. It comes up in that tab. It's subtle, but it's such a better user experience. Your user doesn't get taken out of the flow. It's not another application. It's seamless, and that's the kind of thing we all want to deliver to our users.
And the key to good emulation, I think anyone will understand this, the key to good emulation is to not expose that you're showing the user something else, showing the IE engine in this case. So it's going to be seamless to them. That means they don't have to spend their time in the IE browser. This lets them stay in a modern browser, so all their HTML5 stuff works, and even their older Silverlight or ActiveX stuff works.
So I think one of the key messages for everybody here is Edge needs to be your default browser. It's the most secure browser for commercial organizations, and it also has the most privacy built into it. And so one of the asks from us to you is, go set that setting in your configuration tools in Microsoft Endpoint Manager that makes Edge the default browser for your commercial sites.
Yeah, and you get all these great capabilities. Things like Windows Defender Application Guard, built in. Even the brand new Chromium-based browser already has all of that up and running. You can configure that with Policy or with Intune to get all that stuff up and running.
That's right.
So we've also announced some additional security capabilities and some additional baselines, right? So can you talk us through what we're doing there?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've now built in is we built in a set of baselines. And so a year ago, we announced the security baseline for Windows. Today, we announced that inside of your Intune tenant, you're now going to see security baselines for Edge and for Office 365. And these are the same security baselines that we work with the governments across the planet that they apply to all their PCs. It's schematized, it's in there. All you literally have to do is go apply that policy to your users and devices.
Okay, so I know that you've done a lot of work in terms of working on IT Pro Guidance to really make the end user experience as good as it can be. And I've got, I think, my favorite demo that we want to do today.
Yeah.
So why don't you show some of the things that you can do now once you apply these kind of baselines, the native kind of controls and configurations, what we can expect.
Okay. A year ago, I got really fascinated to understand more about what the experience is that we're putting in the hands of our users. And if I give you the 10-second scenario here, I was literally having dinner with the CFO, and the CFO walked me through, that morning he had a call, and he was 8 minutes late to the call because his PC rebooted, and it took it 8 minutes for it to boot. And I came back to the team and I said, "You guys, we got to do something about this. I see heads nodding up and down here. We hear these horror stories of these long, incredible boots." And so what we've wanted to do is we wanted to understand what caused long boots and then give you guidance to help on it. Now what Jeremy is showing you here is what we call the productivity score. Productivity score is a new score that we're launching here at Ignite. And what this is giving you the insights on what you can do to, first of all, understand your current user experience and then optimize it to deliver a world-class experience. And there's going to be two aspects of it. There's an employee experience and there's a technology experience. The employee experience is, are your users working in modern ways? So you upgrade to Office 365, but are your users working in modern ways? Let me give you a simple example. Are they co-authoring documents or are they attaching things to email? You see the difference? We're going to give you that kind of insights. In the technology experience, we're literally going to give you a view of boot time, battery life, all the ways in which the technology either enables or hinders your users with guidance on how to improve it.
So I'd love you to be able to prove it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay. Maybe some of you have seen this demo today. I jokingly refer to this as the most boring demo ever. I'm going to cold boot my PC, right? Now, Jeremy's going to help me here. So up on the screen here, he's going to pull up my iPhone and we're going to time it. Now, this right here is my corporate PC. This is not some specialized PC where we've taken everything off of it to make sure it boots as fast as it can. This is literally the PC that's managed by our IT department. So I'm going to cold boot my PC, just kind of turn it so you can see it here.
All right,
so,
here we go. We got it up.
So literally here, my PC is booting. And so it's coming up, at this point, you can see it's authenticating. Windows Hello is authenticating me. It's gone through all of our zero trust tests. And you'll see here, I'm going to bring up the browser. My PC is functional. Stop.
Under
Literally,
15 seconds.
Go do this to your PC tonight. How long does it take your PC to boot, from boot to be productive? What we see on average is the commercial PCs are somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes. Now there's 3 causes to that. It's poor hardware, too many group policy settings, too many agents. That causes slow boot, but that also causes a slow resume. It's what causes your battery to drop faster than it should. And it also is the primary cause of all your crashes. So what we've seen here, as we've helped organizations modernize, we've seen an 85% reduction in their boot time. We've also seen an 85% reduction in the number of crashes that they see, and a doubling of their battery life. And you know what? Your users notice it. They go, why is this such an amazing experience? And then it has an incredible impact on their sentiment and their loyalty towards the company. And so, I think one of my primary jobs is to make all of you heroes. I want IT to be able to take a victory lap. And when you put that kind of an experience in the hands of your users, man, they think you're heroes. All right, so you want to see how we're going to help you do it?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
So slip over to my screen right here. So what you're looking at here, this is going to appear in your Microsoft Endpoint Management Console in the first part of the year. And so what you're looking at here is this is that technology score. So I'm looking at boot time here. I'm looking at my startup score. Right here, first of all, you can see I've got a baseline. I'm getting a startup score of 71. That's on a scale of 1 to 100. 100 is great. 0 is terrible. I'm doing currently a baseline. The baseline is of all organizations reporting back. So I'm well ahead of the baseline. I can actually go benchmark against myself. This is a benchmark from a couple of months ago, so I can see the progress. Now we're going to give you insights here like model performance. And so literally, this is data that's coming out of Microsoft. And you can now start to sort on this, like, tell me what is causing my core boot time to be long. This is from the time that it comes from boot up until the time that you see the login screen. The biggest cause there is poor hardware. You can see here HDDs is the largest cause. Then the core sign-in time, what's happening here is you've got agents initializing and you've got group policy initializing. And you can see just dramatic swings in the difference here. So for the first time with this productivity score, we're going to give you insights. And then we're also going to give you advice on what you should do. And if you look over here on the side, we're going to start giving you advice on the things that you should do, hardware, group policies, and agents, to be able to deliver that kind of experience I just showed you on my Surface Laptop 3 to all of your users. Does that sound interesting?
All right. So I still can't get over the fact that it's 2 times battery life. I've always suspected that our own IT policies were kind of hurting the battery, so it's awesome that that's happening. These are also devices that, we have all the security policies, all the things. You've got access to privileged information, obviously. Everything's protected. Multi-factor auth is still on, so super secure. Now, I know your team's also been working on managing configuration all the way down to the metal, all the way down to the firmware. Can you show us what's new there?
Yeah, and so one of the things that we've struggled with as an industry is every OEM, every hardware manufacturer has had their own way to update the BIOS or the firmware. And in fact, most organizations just avoid doing it because it's been too complex. And so what I did is I worked with the Surface team, and you see here a screenshot of what we call the Device Firmware Configuration Interface, or DFCI. And this is, we hope this will become the standard way that all OEMs will provide an interface where their firmware, their BIOS can be configured. Jeremy's showing you here, I could go down here and say disable the camera. What that actually does is it disables the power down at the firmware level, so there's no power going to the camera. If you were to go look at Device Manager, it wouldn't even show up. So you don't have to go put a piece of tape on your camera anymore if you want to disable the camera, right? But the goal here is we've now taken all the code for this, we put it up in GitHub, and now we're working across the OEM ecosystem to say, let's standardize on a way to do this across all models to make it easier for our customers. So look for more announcements coming out on DFCI, but I'm super excited about this one.
All right, so the last topic I want to cover is how we're bringing IT and security teams together. We've had Rob Lefferts on the show showing some of the cool integration work there. Why don't you show us how everything hooks up with your side of the fence?
Okay. And so if you go out on my screen here, I want to show you something we call threat and vulnerability management. Now the concept here is, in most organizations you've got a security team that sets policies, and then there's an IT team that implements it. The security team often also will do hunting for issues, and then they instruct or they have an ask, a ticket, in order to have the IT team go do things. Now today the way that works is you open a ticket, you give information in an email or maybe in a spreadsheet, but it's a bunch of humans doing it.
Yeah.
It takes time.
I remember, somebody would say, I want to find every machine that runs this process. Okay, let's open up an inventory, do all of that, wait for a couple of days to get all of that information back. At that point, you don't even have all the devices maybe that have that process running. Then we have to actually ship a patch out to the same machine, so it can take sometimes several days, sometimes a week or so to patch that. Now it's faster, right?
And so what we have done up in Microsoft 365, all these are just all services running in our cloud. So we can now connect the security with the management aspects of our cloud and have you communicate instantaneously on action. So let me walk you through a scenario. Threat and vulnerability management here takes a list we have up in the cloud of all known threats and all known vulnerabilities on Windows. And then we continuously scan your PCs to see if you have PCs that are still open and exploitable by the known threats and vulnerabilities. And it's been fascinating. The first thing you see is an exposure score. And then over here you have a personalized to-do list of how you should spend your time that has the greatest impact. Now let me click onto one of these right here because I want to make a point here for a second. As I click into this one, you're going to see here, this is a list of all of the exploits in this particular tenant that has devices that are still open and exploitable. Now think about your organization for a minute. If your security team found this list of devices that needed to be updated, how would they tell the IT team, here's the payload or the configuration change, here's the devices to target? How would they do that today? Could you do it instantaneously? And the answer for most organizations is no. So now let me show you what we've done here. This is that particular issue. I'm going to go into my remediation options, and right here I'm going to say open a ticket for Intune. Now that'll say Microsoft Endpoint Manager, now that we've got the new branding out. Now it doesn't have to go through Intune. If you have Config Manager in place, Intune can instruct Config Manager, but I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, this is a high priority. I want it to start immediately. Please get it done, and submit the request. Now what's happened up in the Microsoft 365, there's just been a cloud-to-cloud communication, and Defender ATP has told Intune all of the instructions about what it needs to be done. So if I click over now into the endpoint security and I come to my tasks, so now I'm back in the IT Pro experience here, the endpoint administrator, and I'm going to do a refresh here. You can see here that I have this request that is pending. That's the request that just came in for me. I accept that, and just like that, all those instructions from the security team came over to the Intune organization. Those devices are being updated right now. It's instantaneous, it's error-free. You're far more secure because we're now able to connect IT and security within your organization.
And even the security team gets a progress view into how those patches are going. So really cool stuff that, again, we've shared with Rob Lefferts recently. It's super efficient for both sides from a security and IT perspective. Loving the integration here.
Yeah, and so this really is the best of both worlds because you get that separation of church and state, Both organizations get to have their view, but this is how you deliver that modern workplace that is loved by users, loved by IT, trusted by all.
So this is really awesome in terms of the experience itself that we're driving to help really increase productivity, driving employee sentiment. I think that's a big deal here as well. Now these updates are huge, and I really can't wait to start using Endpoint Manager, but tell us, what's the best way to get started?
Yeah, there's just a couple of things I'd ask you to do. First of all, go check out aka.ms/endpoint manager. All the data in terms of what it is, what we're going to do there, please go check that out. The other thing I would ask you to go do is go cloud connect your config manager deployments. Just go attach Intune to it. You don't have to go co-manage all the devices, but by connecting Intune to your config manager deployment, we can now start to flow down all this insight, all this intelligence. And we're going to make this easy for you. As you upgrade to the 1910 release of Config Manager, a part of that upgrade is going to help you automatically attach an Intune tenant to your Config Manager deployment.
So really great recommendations. Thanks so much again for joining us today, Brad. Also, keep watching Microsoft Mechanics for the latest updates. That's all the time we have for this show. We'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.
Thanks, everybody.